When I pull a container of white rice out of my storage, how long do I have before it goes bad? Let's talk about this. Hey Provident Preppers, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Kylene, and today we are going to answer a question from Jan Williams, who wanted to know, once she opens a container of white rice from her food storage, how long will it stay good? And I think that's a great question.
But first, we want to thank you, Jan, for your question and for being a newbie prepper and for joining our community and taking steps in the right direction. You're doing great things. Relax, take a deep breath, and just know that you are making a difference.
That was a really good question, Jan, because it actually doesn't have a specific answer, because there's 3 different factors that play into that. Now, before we get into that, we are talking about white rice, rolled oats, dry potato flakes, dry pasta,
beans.
Oh, beans, dry beans. These are all really good candidates for long-term storage and can store seriously for 25 to 30 years if it's packaged appropriately. And by packaged appropriately, we mean an airtight container with an oxygen absorber in it. This is a really good example of that. Number 10 cans is absolutely airtight, and it's been packaged with an oxygen absorber, or it's been nitrogen flushed in some way to get rid of the oxygen. And what that does, it has 2 major roles. The first is that it prevents insect infestation. So if there were any bugs at all that came with the grain, they're dead. They cannot survive without oxygen. The second thing that it does is it prevents oxidation, which is one of the things that significantly reduces the shelf life of your stored dried goods. By using the oxygen absorber and the airtight container, you've created a nice little time capsule. So in answering your question, we are supposing that you have done exactly that. The first thing that impacts how long it will store after it's opened is the life of the product. This white rice stored in this number 10 can has a 30-year shelf life. So if I've stored that for 29 years and then I open that can, it will actually degrade faster than if I've only stored it for a year. It's kind of interesting. I can't explain what happens behind that, but I can tell you from personal experience, that's what I've noticed. So you'll have a shorter shelf life if it's already been stored a long time versus if it's just fairly fresh. Now, the second factor that comes into play is storage temperature. For instance, this white rice has a 30-year shelf life at 75 degrees, according to the manufacturer of this product. But
if you can get that temperature down, say to 55 degrees, you can double the shelf life. So do the best you can to store it cool. Can't always get there, but do the best you can.
Our purpose in bringing this up is if you have stored this in a hot garage and it's already degraded at 15 years and you open it, you're just not going to have that long of a shelf life at all. So storage temperature matters, and it does play into this. And then the third is what food product it is. Now, quite frankly, this is kamut. We love kamut. And if I open this can, I have at least a year. I could even do 2 years or more. This kamut and wheat berries store for a long time, as long as they're protected. However, this is jalapenos from our garden, and these are freeze dried. Once these are opened, they get soft really quickly. So I usually oversize my oxygen absorber. So the first few times I use it, when I close it back up, the oxygen absorber will still work because it hasn't been exhausted yet, right? There's still a chemical reaction that can take place. But this is not going to store as long after it's opened as this will. So generally speaking, you have between 6 months and a year or more to be able to use it. We store white rice in buckets like this. Well, we store it all kinds of ways, but in buckets like this, and then we transfer the entire bucket to this bucket that has a gamma seal on it, and we put this in the bottom of our pantry, and this is where we get our white rice. We haven't ever had it go bad. Like it's been just fine for like a year or more. So I would think about that. Right now, you could, if you are concerned about just being a single person and not going through it fast enough, you could put the white rice in little Mylar bags like this, seal it up, and store those in the bucket. But talk about that, John.
That is a very valid point. If you package it smaller, and maybe, maybe this is a good size.
Because this is how many servings?
This is 54 servings. So, you would easily go through this in a year, maybe even in 6 months, maybe even faster, depending on your diet. If that works for you, find a way to package it smaller or buy it in the number 10 cans. These are ideal.
So this one, 54 servings, 6 months is 180 days. So you would be having white rice less than 1 every 3 days, and you'd still be able to do it in 6 months. If you do it in a year, then you got it like once a week.
Yeah.
So that container size is really good. And even this one, a 5-gallon bucket is 33 pounds, and at 4 servings per pound of white rice, you have 132 servings in a 5-gallon bucket. That means that in 180 days, you eat 132 servings. That is not quite every day, right? But do you see it's doable? Even in this size, and you're only one person, you should be able to make it through all that rice before it goes bad, especially in some type of a situation where you are dependent upon your food storage. One little note about what you're storing. The white rice will store the 30 years, not in this package, it won't. But brown rice has a much shorter shelf life because it's higher in oils, and those tend to go rancid in storage. So I store a lot of brown rice because that's what I like to eat, but I have to rotate through it every 5 years or so. And there are all kinds of storage containers. We've got videos on how to store it in used repurposed peat bottles or repurposed glass jars.
Right.
There's all kinds of different ways to do this. The most important thing is that you store food. White rice might not be your favorite, but man, if that's all you had to eat, you would be so grateful to have it. And we really think that now it's time to make sure if you've put this off, it's time to do it. Get your food storage, make sure that you have enough for you and for your family to make it through some really tough times that are coming.
Now for the question of the day. What other questions do you have about food storage? Let's bring them out. Let's talk about them. Let's get educated so that we can do this job right and get it done. And thanks for being part of the solution.